In our quest to interview every person in Diamond City and explore every location, we must now turn our sights upon Solomon, the proprietor of Chemicare, the chem vendor inside Diamond City. We find him selling his goods inside the Diamond City marketplace, and like many of the vendors here in Diamond City, he hollers a lot, trying to attract attention to his shop. Why the name Solomon? Does he in any way take after the Solomon of history, being wise and laying down sound judgments? And if so, where did he find this wisdom? From revelations brought on during states of euphoria after taking consumables? You be the judge.
Self-prescribed chems, as recommended by me, myself, and I. Mentats, buff out, stim packs, jet, everything to even you out. Chemicare cares about you, all your medicinal needs. Don't let the stress of life kill you. Relax with some chems. Gotta pick me up if you're feeling glum. Hey, man, got a lot of chems here if you need something to help you relax.
Did you say something about drugs?
That's right. All the chems you need to fill out your lifestyle. Balance you out. Everyone here buys from me. Sometimes security needs a little psycho, or an engineer needs some mentats. And heck, Rad X is plain universal.
It's interesting to see how there appears to be a greater tolerance towards chems on the East Coast compared to the West. True, there was the drama with Morawski, but only because Morawski and his goons wanted to avoid paying a tax to Mayor McDonough. As for chems themselves, the taboo against using is much less than the one we find amongst people in Nevada.
Looking for a job, if you got one.
Yeah, I got something. Looking for a mutated fern if you find any. I hear some grows out near Forest Grove Marsh. Natural radiation sucker. Be great for cooking Rad X or Rad Away.
Sweeten the deal with some money, and I might be interested.
All right. How about 125 caps?
Come on, make it worth my while, Solomon.
You strong-arming me? That ain't cool. 100 caps, that's all you get.
Mutated fern. Sounds good.
Cool.
I love all the little signs he has outside his shop. Some appear to be handwritten, others look like pre-war advertisements Solomon has repurposed for his shop. Here is a good genuine Mentats, 7 for 25. Huh. Okay, so the singular of Mentats is not Mentat, apparently. Have your prescriptions filled here. Chemicare with a big syringe. And Buff Out. Can't pass without it. The door to Solomon's house is right beneath this Buff Out sign. This is smack dab in the middle of the marketplace, making it difficult to sneak on in. But if we do manage to get inside, there's not much to see. He has a stash of chems and booze on a table to the northeast, and the ground is absolutely filthy. His is one of the most disgusting private homes we find here in Diamond City. Can you imagine what this place would smell like? To the northwest, we find Solomon's bed. He has another table with a lantern and more chems, a first aid box of course, and one tiny suitcase with nothing really interesting inside. But Solomon wants us to go to a place called Forest Grove Marsh. We find it a good ways south of the Weston Water Treatment Plant. When I arrived, I had to fight a sentry bot. Must have been a random encounter. I have no idea how that guy got there. On our way south, we pass a ruined freeway on-ramp, beneath which a trader has made a little shack.
Hey, Scava, let's trade.
Let's see what you have.
But his inventory is less than impressive. A short walk south of here, we arrive at Forest Grove Marsh, and we see that this marsh used to be a town, but now it's flooded. How did this place get flooded? We'll have to investigate. As we wander the streets of Forest Grove Marsh, we see that one of the most prominent buildings in this place is a ruined gun shop. Indeed, walking into the gun shop is how we discover Forest Grove Marsh. And on the ground floor, we find our very first mutated fern. This gun shop still has a bit of loot. We find a cash register with money and pre-war goods, a submachine gun and a display case, a great way to get one earlier in the game, if we haven't gone to Vault 114, a lunch pail with minor loot, and an advanced locked floor safe, with more randomized loot. Heading outside, we see logs and other ramps connecting the rooftop of the gun shop with some of the nearby buildings. Going back inside, we can try to find a way to access this, but as we do, we get attacked by a ghoul. We find some ammunition in a nearby display case. There's a duffel bag on a shelf next to some target dummies, and then we see a staircase going to the top floor. Rounding a corner to the north, we find an ammo box underneath a computer terminal and a weapons workbench. Here, we see a log acting as a bridge to a nearby house. But turning around back and going southeast, we see that someone has formed a ramp out of an old desk and some plywood. We see a ghoul wandering around in the water below. Another ghoul comes from a nearby building. I tried to climb up on this roof to explore, but we just kept getting attacked by more ghouls. Finally, I had enough of it. I jumped on down and wandered around the streets, killing as many ghouls as possible until they were all dead.
Just get worm zombies. Found you. Come on. You're gonna pay.
Finally! At last I can loot this place. Well, now I've gotten myself all turned around killing these ghouls, so let's start exploring fresh. In the middle of the town, we see a big yellow earth-moving machine. Bulldozer, maybe? Someone has leaned some stairs against it, and we find a ramp going north to a rooftop and south to a rooftop. Let's go south first. Here we find more mutated fern growing on the roof. It's almost as if someone was using this as a farm. On the next rooftop, we see the log that connected to the gun shop. Okay, now I know where I am. Taking the ramp to the south, we see a ramp to the west that again leads to the gun shop. That's the one I was trying to explore before I got attacked by ghouls. So turning around, we can go across an old heating duct, which forms a ramp to the nearby roof. Here we find another big garden filled with mutated fern. I wonder why someone was trying to cultivate so much mutated fern. We see a couple of ways forward. Let's continue east and loot more of this mutated fern on the next building over. We could go down a fire escape ladder to the ground, but for now, let's walk across a piece of scrap metal onto the roof of the westernmost house. This, however, is a dead end, but we can kill some ghouls on a nearby building. So, turning around, back to the big fern garden, we'll turn southeast to go across a big ramp made from a warehouse shelf to another series of roofs. Turning west, we can go down a ramp to another rooftop. This leads to the roof that came out the other end of that other ramp we saw on the garden across the way. This connects to the ground with some plywood. We don't need to go there just yet, so retracing our steps, we can climb higher by climbing a staircase to the top of a nearby building. And turning around, we see a ramp made from tables and dresser drawers leading to yet another rooftop. Here we find more mutated fern. We can then go across a ramp made from doors and plywood to the rooftop of the house that the antenna led to, and then take a ladder down to a plywood ramp, which leads to another ramp made from a street light post and more plywood to a nearby building. Holy cow, this is elaborate. Climbing to the top of this building leads to more ramps made from picket fences, which brings us down to the street level. But instead of going down to the street level, we can climb back up and go across a fallen log to the rooftop of a nearby building. Here we find more mutated fern and an ice cooler. But while we're trying to loot it, Kate got attacked by another feral.
What the hell? That's more like it.
Companions have a hard time staying on top of all of these roofs. Inside the cooler, we just find one rat away. Well, to continue exploring this labyrinth, let's retrace our steps back to the one rooftop leading down to a delivery truck using a ramp made from a chicken wire fence. We can take this down to the ground, or we continue across some rebar to the rooftop of another building, which brings us to a tiny little campsite beneath a tarp. Here we find a lantern on the ground and two containers, a chem box and an ammo box. Well, is that it? Have we explored every nook and cranny? There was one path that we missed. Ironically, it was one of the first places we were going to explore before we got distracted. Retracing our steps, we see a blinking light on the top of the gun shop. Climbing up a ramp of plywood to the very top of this building, we see a big barrel on fire to the southwest and a large splattering of blood by a ramp. I hope nothing horrible happened here. Moving north, we find more mutated fern. We see 2 sleeping bags on the ground next to a bottle of Nuka-Cola and quite a stash of belongings. Dirty water, a cooler, an ammo box with 4 mini nukes inside, a stash of caps, and a holotape. Sheila's holotape.
Listen, Dale. I don't know what's taking you so long, but you were supposed to meet me here 3 days ago. I'm out of supplies, and I'm gonna have to make a run. I can see why that Solomon guy is willing to pay so much for these ferns, 'cause let me tell ya, getting walkways set up here has been a real pain in my ass. Wait for me to get back before you take the first load to Diamond City. I've got a couple of things I want.
Hey, Sheila! That you up there? The walkways look great, but how do I get up there?
There you are. Took your sweet time, Dale. Head over a block, there's... Oh, shit! Barrels! Dale, look out! Run! Run!
So Sheila's the one who put together all of these ramps. She and Dale came here trying to collect the mutated fern for Solomon. How many people has Solomon sent here to their deaths just to get his mutated fern? On a box near the blinking light is an end-of-dungeon steamer trunk with a good stash of ammunition inside, and I did not find a way to turn off this blinking light, nor do I understand what it's for. There appears to be a big metal antenna sticking out of it, but there's no switch, no ham radio, no transmitter, nothing to interact with. It's just a persistent blinking red light. We sadly don't find the corpses of Sheila and Dale, which I suppose is to be expected after all. They were killed by ferals, and ferals consume their kill. Although I think we can guess exactly where they died. There was that big puddle of blood right as we stepped off of the ramp onto this roof. The only other item of note is if we explore a rooftop to the northeast, we find a tool case with more ammunition and a few small guns inside, and we can go across another ramp up some scaffolding to another rooftop with a toolbox next to a candle. And that's about it for this small little town. It's flooded, but it's only about waist deep. If we travel east of the town, we go uphill out of the water, and we find a portion of the town that was not flooded. Most of the buildings here are completely wrecked, but we do find a pre-war pub. Of note, behind the counter, we find a door that's been trapped. After disarming a tension trigger, we can then disarm a makeshift bomb. But just before opening the door, we awaken some feral ghouls.
I'm gonna rip your lips off. No wiping the floor with ya.
Inside, we find a supply closet with just one piece of jet and a tiny first aid kit. So a little disappointing. Heading upstairs, we see that this top floor must have been the private quarters of the people who ran this pub. The proprietor's body still lies on a couch facing a television next to a seat that has a teddy bear. The kitchen is to the northwest, and interestingly we find a beaker and flasks, hinting that maybe this pub owner might have dabbled in the chem trade. The answer as to why this town may be flooded lies to the northeast. Here we find a pre-war lock. The lock was used to help ships travel between the ocean and the river, which flowed at different levels. Taking a look at the edge of the town, we see a retaining wall barely peeking above the water. There are portions where the wall is beneath the water. I believe this tells us that before the war, this river flowed at a much lower level. Sometime during the 200 years between the Great War and today, water and other drainage has engorged this river, dramatically increasing its height. Not so high that it flows over the lock, but high enough that it breached the retaining wall of the town, completely submerging Forest Grove Marsh. Now, had the bombs not dropped, those in charge of the lock could have opened it a bit more to compensate for the greater flow of the river, allowing most of it to drain out to the sea so that it didn't flood the town, but they all died, leaving no one here to come to the town's rescue. At any rate, we have the mutated fern we came here for, and so we can head back to Diamond City. Going on over to Solomon.
Found the plant. Here you go.
All right. Here's your payment, plus some samples from the pharmacy. Don't take them all at once now. Moderation. Anyway, I got a store to run. Let's talk shop.
Solomon.
Thanks again for the fern. Plants like that are hard to come by. Now, you here to pick up some chems?
Not today.
Cool. Cool.
We complete the unmarked quest Botany class. He gives us the caps we agreed upon, and he gives us a small sample of chems. Strangely enough, he only accepts one mutated fern. Unlike similar quests, like the technical documents or viable blood sample quests from the Brotherhood of Steel, we can't repeat this one. And despite what Solomon said, that the mutated fern has properties that are great for creating Rad-X and Radaway, mutated fern is not an ingredient in any recipe we have. So after completing this quest, its only use is as a raw consumable, considering it only heals 15 hit points and at the same time douses us with radiation. That makes the mutated fern more or less useless. My bet is that Solomon's quest was intended to be a repeatable one, but some sort of glitch prevents us from giving him the rest of our mutated fern. Either that, or we get so much mutated fern at Forest Grove Marsh that Bethesda didn't want to give us a way to stock up on chems that quickly this early in the game. At any rate, that's the full story of Solomon, the chem dealer at Diamond City. Now that we've gotten him his mutated fern, perhaps now he'll no longer send people out to their deaths looking for it. Stay tuned, for we'll be going through each of the characters here in Diamond City as we ramp up to a big lore piece on the city. If you want to make sure that you don't miss the next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I publish a new Fallout video 6 days a week on a wide range of topics spanning all of the games. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with all Oxhorn news. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.